So let's first start looking at the mind, and then we will look at the consciousness which illumines the mind. Now, the confusion arises because people use different terms and they classify things a little differently. So the parts of the mind is called antakarana, that is the inner. Karanam is the instrument, anta is inner. It is called the inner instrument. And this, what I'm giving here, is a strict Vedantic classification. Okay, so there is the mind consists of 4 portions. These are not like, they're all a little mix and match. It's not, you can't exactly say this portion is here, that portion is there. So the mind has 4 portions. Manas refers to the feeling distributed throughout the body. Emotions, processing, all these come under manas. Then buddhi, the intellect. Largely, this is associated with the prefrontal cortex. Then ahankara, this is a little mysterious thing. The sense of, you can call, there's no literal translation word in English. So it's difficult to find a word which literally denotes what ahankara is. It literally means, kara means maker. That's like karanam is an instrument, one which does. Aham kara means the I maker. So this is the portion of the mind which seems to grasp every aspect, like the feelings, everything, and says, and puts an I before it. I feel anger. Instead of saying there is anger in the mind, it says it grasps everything, and it says, I feel anger. I am smart. I made a decision. The intellect makes a decision. Let's go that way. Let's not go this way. Then the ahankara just, it snatches that and says, it puts the I and says, I made the decision. And then this chitta, according to Vedanta, it's a memory faculty. Last time we saw, I described it as the movie theater example, where from the memory, the things can go from the senses, the film goes this way, from the memory, the film goes that way, and it projects it on the screen. So chittas, literally, it's a memory faculty. Now, why the confusion comes between different portions is because of the analogies. So 2 things you have to remember. And Lena, so this is pertaining to your question. So what I was telling before was that you have to look at the forest and not the trees, and just grasp the big picture. And you have to know all analogies fail, because at some point you can't take it too literally. So I was giving the example of the movie theater, which is commonly used by a lot of, like in the yoga text, how they teach the Yoga Sutras, they use that example, but that also falls apart at some point. So these are the 4 points. Now, Lena came and asked me, oh, BKS Iyengar in his book says that the mind has 3 portions, manas, buddhi, ahankara, and the mind is called chitta. So I looked through Swami Hariharananda's commentary. I could not find this, but in the glossary, it says chitta is the 3 functional aspects of the mind. So you can see there's some difference. I don't know if it's his glossary or it is the glossary of the translator, the person who translated it into English. So let's stick with this, because if you have the 3 functional aspects, then you leave out the memory faculty. So let's just stick with that. This is not too important. What you have to know is how the consciousness illumines all this. So we are going to see. So pay careful attention. All these 4 faculties are sometimes lumped together as chitta. They call it the mind field. So that's why there is a saying which says, chittiva bhavayati chittam. Chitta shines like the consciousness. Why? Because it is illumined by consciousness, like reflected. That's why they use the term chidabhasa. So there are different analogies to explain the same thing. You have to get the gist of it and not take it too literally. Okay. So one example is the movie theater example, where the film contents are projected onto the screen, and antakarana or chitta is the mind field, the movie theater. Pratyaya is the contents of the screen, the purusha is the light from the projector. All these examples we've seen before. So from memory, the film goes this way. From senses, it goes this way. There's a reflection on the screen. That is what we see. What when I say we see, it is the purusha that sees that. Okay, it sees the reflection. Another way, literally, in the Vedas and in the Upanishads, the term that is used is it illumines. Purusha illumines. So think of it like the mind. There are all these vrittis, constantly these impressions are changing, the pattern is changing. That is not visible. It's only when it's illumined by consciousness we see that. But the thing is, the consciousness, you think consciousness being so perfect, the Brahman, it'll tell everything correctly. No, it just tells the contents of the mind. If the mind interprets things differently, that's what we see. So that's what we mean by saying it's projected onto the screen. So this film I've shown from memory, from senses, but it can also be the film of the buddhi, intellect. So it could be like this, the buddhi, intellect, it's like film or some kind of a thing which is projected onto the screen, and that is what you see. And if the intellect makes wrong decisions, that is what you're seeing. It's how the intellect is shaped that is seen. So when it's projected on the screen, when it is illumined, that's the only word that is used. When it's illumined by the Purusha, which is the projector light, then everything becomes known to all aspects. So we'll see that with the example. So the Chidabhasa is a reflection on the screen. That is what is perceived by the mind. Now, one important thing I have to say is there is this portion of cognition. There's part awareness, part mechanical nature. So let's look at the intellect, problem solving by the intellect. The mind intellect works mechanically through memory, pattern recognition, and association. This sometimes happens without self-awareness. You don't know what's happening. Quickly, mind just makes the patterns because through habit, even mathematical geniuses, because of the habit, everything happens so fast. There's sometimes like there's no awareness of that. This forms a Vishayakara vritti. Then consciousness illumines that vritti and the experience becomes, so this is the answer. So whenever you know something, then consciousness illumines it. And who knows? It is you, the consciousness. And in that process, the information is available to the mind. When it's known, it's available to the mind, to all the portions of the mind. Otherwise, it's just mechanical thing that's going on. Then consciousness illumines that vritti and the experience becomes, this is the answer. This is one of the steps towards the answer. When you're doing a mathematical, analyzing a problem through multiple steps, sometimes you just are not even aware of the mechanically, the pattern matching happens. And then you say, this is the answer. And this portion is very similar for the manas also. We'll see this mechanical portion. We've seen that is the Vishayakara vritti. And when consciousness sheds light on it, Purushakara vritti, you become aware of that. Okay. AI works only on the Vishayakara vritti. It is therefore not conscious. The mind intellect works mechanically through these memory and pattern recognition. That's also the Vishayakara vritti. Now, the same thing can be said of the manas, the feeling aspect. Manas responds mechanically to a thought or external situation. The body tenses, the heart beats faster. You are still not aware of the vritti of the manas. Then suddenly you realize, when you feel, that's why they say, feel the body, you feel, my heart is beating faster. I am feeling knots in my stomach. Consciousness illumines that, then the feeling becomes known as fear is present. Okay. Now we've seen buddhi, manas, and So we'll go through the cycle. I haven't illustrated ahankara. This is the function. These are the functional aspects. Memory is not described as a functional aspect. So the four portions of the mind. I hope it's clear, this classification. Now we'll put everything together. Illustration of the entire chain using fear as an example. Manas experiences. So the Manas is also called a king of the senses. Remember in Puranjana Upakyanam? So in the Puranjana Upakyanam, we saw there were 10 soldiers and there was a head soldier. The head soldier was Manas. Manas is also called the king of the Indriyas, the senses, because the information from the senses is processed. So Manas experiences fear first. Then consciousness illumines it. Then it becomes aware. It's known. It is known to the buddhi now. Like it's projected on the screen. So this, you can kind of say, okay, the entire mind now knows what's happening. Buddhi decides fight or flight. Then ahankara appropriates the experience and decision as, I feel fear, I need to fight. Okay, I feel the fear, I need to fight. So the I comes in. I will get destroyed otherwise. So consciousness illumines this ahankara also. Ahankara, as I said, is literally I maker. It is not the true I that is seeing everything. Ahankara itself is a very subtle vritti or function of the antakarana. Antakarana is the mind. Usually, it stands so close to the light of consciousness that it pretends to be the subject. But in meditation, when discriminatory vivekam, discriminatory knowledge arises, you'll notice there is a sense of I rising. It is claiming, it is a doer thought. There is some hurt that is in this. So ahankara has become the scene at the moment. The real seer is not the ahankara. Do you see that? When the mind slows down, you see there is a sense of I arising that is claiming this. It is now, it's a doer thought. The feeling of hurt is now claimed as my own. You see that in deep meditation. That is why meditation is the key. Then, once it becomes the object to the drishyam, it's no longer the subject. You don't feel like it's a subject. It's tricking you into saying that this is the real I, but it's not the real I. Is this somewhat clear? So I try to put everything together so you understand the flow. Okay? Ahankara and the Purusha, the difference is true I, the Purusha, is a silent illuminator of all states. It is never angry. It never decides. It is not the doer. It never acts. It's not the doer. Ahankara is the reflected, borrowed I that claims states like, I am angry, I decide, I know, I act. Okay. We also saw in the four states of samadhi, vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita, the samprajnata samadhi, after the bliss asmita, the pure I remains without this is also not the consciousness, it is the reflected I. It's as though the moon is like the consciousness, remember that example, then the reflected I is like just a pure reflection of the moon. It is still not the consciousness itself, but it's a reflection. Because why is it not the consciousness? You can never see the consciousness. Subject cannot see itself. But in that case, I am only remains. That is called the Sasmita Samadhi, where all notions, you are a teacher, you're a man, woman, everything fall away, just the I remains. Is this part clear? So I'm trying to connect everything, what you've studied before. I also, in the second chapter, I made a distinction between ahankara and asmita. Asmita is better than ahankara, because ahankara colors. I am smart, I am intelligent, I make this decision, it colors everything. Asmita is just I, but even that is a klesha, because it is not the true you. It is just a reflection in the mind. That's it about this portion. So ponder over it. I've tried to, again, all these are analogies, and there's also limitation. This is why great people, they use the right words to explain. But I've listened to like hundreds of hours of great teachers like Swami Sarvapriyananda and everybody, because they all talk using analogies and all that. You have to try to get a gist of that. If you take the analogies too literally, it can lead you astray. Okay, now coming back to this portion which we already studied last class, the sutras. Now you will see how they make sense. The chiter apratisankramaya tatakara pattau swabhuti samvedanam. Although the chit does not move, mix, or enter the mind, when the buddhi assumes a consciousness like form, that's why chittiva bhavayati chittam, this entire mind, it shines as because of the reflection. Because when the buddhi assumes a consciousness like form, because of the reflecting light, one's own buddhi becomes experienced, illumined. Your intellect itself is illumined. Okay, that is the first one. So this is the reflected consciousness they talk about. Okay, quality of the reflecting medium, we just saw the moon. This is pure eye, we saw. Okay, then it says drashtu drishyoparaktam chittam sarvartam, the mind being colored by the seer and the seen, Purusha and the Prakriti, it can understand everything. So this is Amy's question. The Purusha itself cannot. That's why they say Shiva without Shakti is Shava, dead body. Shava is a dead body. So mind being colored by the seer and the seen, it can understand everything. Otherwise, the consciousness only illumines. It is useless. It can't do anything without the Prakriti. Now, the other part is the cognition. I said has two steps. One is mechanical, Vishayakara vritti. Even when you are feeling fear, you may be distracted with something, but the stomach is churning. It's only when you bring your awareness, I am feeling this unease, everything that happens. Till that, it remains a Vishayakara vritti. When the consciousness illumines it, it becomes known. So the sculpture is getting formed, but when the light shines on it, they say the mind takes the form of an object, which means you see a bull, that's mind is now taking that form and consciousness illumines it. That's called the Purushakara vritti. Okay. Vishakara vritti, or the vritti vyapti, is a mechanical process. Okay. So these two steps are there in the knowing process.